June 1944. Northern France. A small Allied unit is stranded in a crumbling village. The radio is silent. Soldiers wait, tense and anxious, for reinforcements that never arrive. Every hour stretches into eternity. The summer of 1944 was one of decisive movement and brutal fighting. Allied forces had landed on the beaches of Normandy just weeks earlier. The goal was clear: push inland and liberate France from German occupation. Yet, the rapid advance created fragile supply lines. Communication was difficult, roads were destroyed, and pockets of German resistance remained stubbornly entrenched. In the outskirts of a small village in northern France, a company of American infantry found themselves isolated. Their mission had been to hold a strategic crossroads, preventing German reinforcements from reaching the front lines. Maps were incomplete, intelligence was outdated, and the terrain was confusing. The men were a mix of seasoned veterans and young recruits. They understood the stakes. They understood the danger. Yet, there was a shared sense of disbelief. Command had promised support within hours. Trucks, ammunition, and additional troops were expected to arrive before nightfall. The village itself was quiet at first. Buildings were scarred by shellfire, windows blown out, and streets littered with rubble. Smoke from distant artillery drifted across the horizon. Soldiers set up positions in damaged houses, dug shallow foxholes, and tried to make sense of the sparse orders. Each man carried a rifle, some with extra grenades, a few with light machine guns. The weight of their gear mirrored the weight of responsibility they bore. Despite the order to hold the crossroads, there was little communication from headquarters. Patrols were sent to scout the roads, returning with grim reports. Bridges were destroyed. German patrols were spotted nearby. The villagers, frightened, offered little information. Supplies were minimal. The company commander, a calm yet determined officer, moved among his men. He checked positions, encouraged the young soldiers, and tried to keep morale steady. Every decision mattered. Every misstep could mean disaster. As the afternoon wore on, the tension became almost palpable. Men stared at the horizon, listening for engines, any sign of approaching trucks. But silence persisted. By evening, shadows lengthened across the empty streets. Orders from command never arrived. Radio messages went unanswered. The soldiers, once confident, began to feel the isolation. They were no longer just holding a position, they were alone. The village seemed to shrink around them. Every corner, every alley could hide danger. The stage was set for what would become a grim ordeal. Night fell. Darkness brought heavy stillness. Soldiers huddled together in crumbling buildings, whispering plans, counting ammunition, and listening for the distant rumble of enemy vehicles. The commander ordered night patrols, but the darkness made movement perilous. Mines and traps were everywhere. German forces had not retreated. By the second night, German reconnaissance had discovered the isolated unit. Small skirmishes erupted on the roads leading to the village. Mortar fire became intermittent but deadly. Each explosion sent splinters and dust into the air. Soldiers responded, firing their limited weapons, but the enemy had superior numbers and positions. Attempts to call for reinforcements failed. Radios crackled but yielded only static. Signals flares were fired, but no aid came. The men realized that promises of support were illusions. They were alone. Tension rose with every hour. Fatigue and hunger began to wear on them. Sleep was impossible. The commander faced difficult decisions. Should they retreat under fire and risk complete annihilation? Or hold their position and hope reinforcements might arrive by morning? He chose to hold. Every soldier knew that surrender was not an option. Fear and determination coexisted in a fragile balance. By the third day, German forces intensified their attacks. The isolated company repelled assaults with desperate courage, but losses mounted. Communication was impossible. The village had become a labyrinth of shadows, broken walls, and empty streets. Soldiers relied on instinct and discipline. The sense of abandonment was complete. Every man in the unit understood the stakes. They were a buffer, a line of resistance delaying a larger enemy advance. Yet the psychological toll was immense. Letters from home were read and reread, memories of family and friends mingling with the horrors of the battlefield. Each soldier questioned if anyone outside the village remembered them, or if their struggle had already been erased from the larger narrative of war. On the fourth day, the Germans launched a coordinated assault. Mortars shook the village. Machine guns raked the streets. Infantry advanced through the ruins. The American company was outnumbered. Every position was under threat. The commander moved between makeshift barricades. He shouted orders. Soldiers fired from shattered walls, rubble, and destroyed houses. The air was thick with smoke and dust. Explosions scattered debris. Men fell silently, or cried out and were gone. A forward position on the crossroads was lost. Soldiers tried to hold it, but German fire was relentless. Retreat was impossible. Ammunition was almost gone. Reinforcements had not arrived. Inside the village, chaos unfolded in every street. Soldiers ran from building to building, dragging wounded comrades. Some fought to the last bullet. Others surrendered when surrounded. The once organized unit became fragmented. The sense of being alone grew heavier with each passing hour. By mid-afternoon, the commander realized that survival was unlikely. Enemy forces controlled most of the village. He moved to the center, rallying the remaining men. The few who responded were exhausted and wounded. Morale was low, but they continued to resist. Attempts to reach headquarters failed. Radios remained silent. Flares sent into the sky drew no response. The company's isolation was complete. As evening approached, the fighting slowed. German soldiers advanced cautiously, securing streets and ruins. The survivors hid, some escaping through alleys, some captured. Many lay wounded where they had fallen. The village was lost. The American company, promised support, had been abandoned. Their stand delayed the enemy only briefly. Few men survived. Reinforcements had never come. The commander, gravely wounded, watched as the last resistance collapsed. The village was silent but scarred. Dust and smoke hung in the air. The men who had fought and waited in vain were gone. Their struggle was forgotten, leaving only ruins and silence behind. The village lay in silence. Broken walls cast long shadows under the weak morning light. Smoke drifted from ruins. Streets were empty. Shells had torn up the roads. Craters marked where mortars had struck. Windows hung from frames, splintered glass glinting faintly. Few survivors remained. Those who did crawled from hiding places. Some were wounded. Some were too shocked to move. Faces were pale, eyes hollow. They were small in the vast emptiness. No one came to greet them. No reinforcements. No aid. Only ruins and the echo of gunfire that no longer sounded. The commander sat on the steps of a shattered house. He held his side where shrapnel had struck. His uniform was torn, stained with mud and blood. Around him, remnants of the company lay scattered. Personal effects, a helmet, a dog tag, a rifle, were abandoned in the streets. Each item told a silent story. Each object marked someone who had vanished. Time passed slowly. No one came. Smoke rose in thin, curling lines, fading into gray sky. The air smelled of dust, gunpowder, and the faint decay of the dead. A lone bird landed on a roof and took flight immediately, startled by the silence. The village, once alive with movement and orders, was now a graveyard of memory. Soldiers who had fought, who had waited, who had hoped for aid, were gone. Their existence shrank to shadows and objects. The crossroads they defended was open, unguarded. Roads stretched into the horizon, empty. Villagers who had survived peeked from ruins, hesitant. They moved silently, avoiding the open streets. No voices called. No footfalls approached. History had passed over the village. The names of the men who held it vanished almost immediately from reports. Few accounts survived. Letters and dispatches carried their names briefly, then were lost. The commander rose with effort. He walked slowly through the debris. He touched walls that had once been barricades. He looked at streets where friends had fallen. Each step was heavy. He could remember faces, sounds, shouts, but the village would not remember him. The world outside had already moved on. Evenings brought shadows that seemed to stretch longer than before. The air cooled. Silence pressed down like a weight. Fires smoldered without tending. Animals roamed where men once walked. Nature began reclaiming the streets. The battle had ended days ago, but nothing marked it except the ruins. Months later, a passing patrol noted the village. Some buildings remained standing. Some streets could be recognized. But the story of the men who had held the crossroads, who had waited for reinforcements that never came, had faded. Graves were unmarked. Names were forgotten. Letters were returned unopened. Only the empty streets bore witness. The village became a shadow of memory. Nothing else survived. The company's sacrifice remained unrecorded. No banners. No monuments. Only silence and dust. Only echoes and broken buildings. Only absence. Time continued. Roads were repaired elsewhere. War moved forward. History celebrated victories. The men who were left alone were erased. The commander's eyes, once alert and commanding, closed in exhaustion. He sat alone. The world had forgotten. The village had forgotten. The men were gone. Nothing remained but ruins, smoke, and the quiet that stretched endlessly. The battle had occurred. The soldiers had waited. The reinforcements had never come. And soon, the memory of it all would vanish completely. Silence. Dust. Shadows. Absence. Forgotten. If this story mattered to you, consider subscribing. More forgotten history is coming.